Well, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you for this social business coffee break, which today is exploring the topic of how to be brilliant at getting investment for your social enterprise. My name's Tim West, and I'm the founding editor of Pioneers Post, a magazine for pioneering entrepreneurs, investors, innovators, and policymakers working to create sustainable solutions for the world's most pressing social and environmental challenges. We're not only a magazine, but we're also a social enterprise ourselves with a mission to support our community of impact pioneers to build a better world through good business. And we do this through our journalism, but also with our ongoing program of awards, training, webinars, and networking opportunities. Now, the social business coffee breaks are about both learning and connecting the pioneers in our community. They aim to give you a shot of social business inspiration to energize your morning and also to provide some really practical ways to address the challenges you face as you attempt to sustain and grow a thriving social business. The coffee break sessions are also delivered in partnership with NatWest Social and Community Capital, which is NatWest Bank's independent social investment charity, as part of the learning and networking program that we've developed together for the SE100 and WISE 100 awards community. Now, if you want to grow your organization and increase your impact, then you're going to need some money to do it with. New staff, new technology, and new ideas all need funding, but where do you go to find it? For social ventures, sometimes revenue is not enough. Getting investment is really important, but often even more challenging. And you can't go down a conventional route because normal investors don't understand your non-profit business model. But social investment can also be expensive, impatient, and sometimes focused on specific sectors, themes, or criteria that might tempt you to contort your mission or give up because you don't fit the profile. So in this coffee break discussion, we're going to explore all these issues and more with some people who have experienced and overcome the challenges from both sides of the investment equation, including an award-winning social entrepreneur who got investment from 2 local authorities and a foundation. And we'll also hear from 2 experts who can update us on the latest investment opportunities available to social businesses and how to get investment ready. So let me introduce them all. And in our SE100 awards, we have a prize recognizing the pioneers in impact investing. And so we're really pleased that Sophie Clarke, who's CEO of We Are Juno, joint winner of this year's SE100 Social Investment Pioneer Award, is on our panel today. Welcome, Sophie.
Hello.
Also with us are, hi. Also with us are Annie Constable, Digital Content Manager at Good Finance, who was one of this year's SE100 judges, and Brendan Hegarty, Loans Officer at NatWest Social and Community Capital, and also a judge in this year's awards. Welcome to both of you. Now, those of you who are regulars to these coffee break discussions will also know that we always ask our guests to tell us what they are drinking this morning because it's a coffee break. And so today I have brewed up a pot of Somerstown espresso coffee from the Honest Grind Coffee Company based in Camden in North London, not far from where I live. Honest Grind, really interesting organisation. They exist to create pathways for vulnerable young people to employment. And rather like our social enterprise panellists today, Honest Grind is actually part funded by their local authority, so through Camden Council's Youth Support Service. They describe themselves as a radical employability programme, giving London's most vulnerable young people a place to engage in individually tailored training, to learn industry standard skills and develop a future career. They say on their website that they believe everyone, whatever cards they've been dealt, deserves a shot at a better life. So, Sophie, I'm not sure if you know about Honest Grind since you're based in a completely different part of the country, but I thought that both the local authority support for this enterprise and the sentiment of supporting vulnerable young people would resonate with you and the work you're doing at We Are Juno. We're going to hear about that work a little bit later, but for now, Sophie, I'm just going to ask you, what is your chosen brew this morning?
Well, I don't trust myself, Tim, to have caffeine before something like this because I talk quite quickly as it is. So I've gone for a peppermint tea, and it's a peppermint tea from a lovely kind of local business called Leaf that's been set up in Liverpool, and
Very nice.
we've now got a couple of cafes and things, but it's all loose leaf and it's beautiful.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And they're local to Liverpool, you see.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a
Right.
female MD, which, yeah, she's brilliant.
Brilliant. Okay, Brendan, how about you?
So I've had my orchard tea this morning, but I've recently introduced a mint tea. So I've gone out to the garden, picked some mint, and I'm drinking mint tea today for this.
2 lots of mint tea. That's pretty good. Okay, Annie, what's your morning drink of choice?
Unbelievably, I have also gone for a Moroccan mint variety
Wow.
from the Tea People, which is a social enterprise. I think their mission is to kind of procure, curate, and promote a wide variety of natural, healthier, and superior quality tea. And their aim is essentially to eliminate poverty in tea growing regions in the world. But yeah,
Brilliant.
another one for mint.
Marvellous. A minty morning. Very good. Okay, thank you. So we've taken our first sips of coffee or mint tea, and it's now time to tackle the key topic of conversation: how to be brilliant at getting investment for your social enterprise. For the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to hear from our panelists. We'll then aim to have time for questions at the end. So please get your questions ready. Welcome to everyone who's joined us so far. We'll try and get your questions in at the end, but we might also have time to get some quick Q&A in as we go along. So please do put up your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll try and address those as soon as we can. Now, we're going to start off with Annie from Good Finance. Annie, we've asked you to give us an overview of the current scene, what we mean by social investment, what you can use it for, challenges and opportunities, and what Good Finance has observed across the sector. And then after Sophie and Brendan have spoken, you're going to come back in with a few more thoughts and lessons to share. So Annie, the floor is yours. Welcome. Please tell us about Good Finance and how to be brilliant at getting investment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim. And can you see my screen okay there? Is that coming up?
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as Tim mentioned, I'm Annie. I'm from an organisation called Good Finance. Our mission is to help charities and social enterprises to navigate the world of social investment. So we are a joint venture, jointly funded by Better Society Capital and Access, the Foundation for Social Investment. And essentially, we're here to try and make your life easier, give you slightly less headaches when you're trying to kind of navigate the minefield that can be kind of jargon, acronyms, buzzwords, etc., etc. We're here to hopefully make your life a little bit easier. As Tim mentioned, before we can kind of really dive into how to be brilliant at getting social investment, we think it's really important to get a grasp on exactly what we mean by social investment, what it is, crucially what it isn't, how it works in practice, and whether it's a viable option for your organisation either now or potentially something to keep in your back pocket for the future. So the definition we use for what is social investment is the use of repayable finance to help an organisation to achieve its social purpose. So as it mentions there, it may sit alongside grants, donations, and other income streams. Your organisation may then generate a profit or a surplus, and that surplus is what is used to repay the investors and means that you can afford that social investment loan. It's really important to remember that it's not a grant or a donation or a direct replacement for grants or donations. It is money that you have to pay back with interest usually, and it's not suitable for everyone. So it should always be considered alongside other funding and finance options, and also really important to do that research before you kind of commit to looking into that further. We like to say that social investment sits alongside donations and grants as just another tool that you can use to create impact. So a couple of other examples of elements of that financial toolkit. So you've got kind of trading, contracts or payment by results, perhaps for a local authority, grants, and then banks as well. So kind of your more mainstream finance from perhaps high street banks. And then obviously we've got social investment as well. And you may use a combination of all or some of these tools depending on your own circumstances and what works for your organisation and its legal structure. Key considerations. So the real kind of 3 pillars that we want organisations, or we encourage organisations to think about ahead of exploring social investment. Number 1 being purpose. So what do you actually need the investment for? Is it going to help you to buy an asset that perhaps will then make your rental payments cheaper? Is it to actually kickstart a new venture? We avoid the term startup here. Some investors will invest in startup opportunities, others will not. It really does depend on the investor. Is it to grow and innovate a service that's already working and you think that could help a lot more people with a little bit of more capital? Or is it actually to maintain cash flow? Perhaps you've got some kind of unpredictable bills, bill structure, and it's important to have that capital for peace of mind for you and your employees. There are many other reasons for taking on social investment, but at Good Finance, these are the ones we see most frequently. The second one is repayment. So this is a really crucial one. Do you have a profitable income stream that will help you to afford the investment? As I mentioned, that can come from a range of different activities, from contracts, rental income, donations and trading. Some investors will even see grants and donations as part of that, but it's really important that you have a solid and dependable income stream that makes the loan affordable and doesn't kind of put you into any adverse payment stress. Finally, impact. What impact will you create? And this is the third and final pillar, and perhaps one that really differentiates social investment from other forms of more mainstream finance. And that's, what impact will you create for the users that you serve? Who's going to benefit? How are you going to measure and report that impact to stakeholders, including your social investor? And is it sustainable? Has this service or kind of your organisation got longevity to continue to help people in the future? And a tip that we have there is actually we have a social investor directory that lists over 100 social investors and funds across the UK, and 85% of social investors listed there are in fact charities or social enterprises themselves. And we include that because we think it's important to know, you know, a lot of them are under the same kind of constraints that you are, face very similar challenges, and they get it, essentially, they get what you're going through. So very quickly, there are 2 main types of social investment that you may wish to consider. Borrowing is the first one, or debt. So that's taking out a loan which you agree to repay over a set period of time. Most of these debt investments are paid back with interest, and that's a fee that you pay the investor for the use of their money. So for example, your organisation might borrow £10,000 and you repay a total of £11,000 at £229 per month over 4 years. The second type is equity. So this is selling shares in your organisation to an investor. Equity investors receive a share of any profits paid out by the organisation, and they also get to have a say in how that organisation is run. An example of that might look like an investor paying £10,000 to own 10% of your organisation. Who provides the capital? Again, that really varies, and there is a very diverse range of investors out there. They can broadly be split into 2 categories, one being an organisation, so that's a specialist social investment firm, a social bank, or a trust and foundation, or others. And then the second being an individual, and that looks a little bit more like crowdfunding campaigns, community share offers, and some input from angel investors as well. We often get the question, what makes a social investor different, or what makes a social investor social? And this diagram is quite helpful to help us explain that. So to the right, you've got your more mainstream financial institutions. All they care about, well, they mostly care about financial return. It's a business transaction. They've lent you that money and they want that back with interest. But they don't really have too much of a say in what you do with that capital. To the left, we've got the pure kind of philanthropic sources. So your trusts, your grant-giving institutions, they really care about what difference that money is going to make to society and for the long run, but they're not really bothered about getting that money back at all, let alone with interest. So we like to say social investments sit somewhere in the middle. So an investor will need their money back with interest so that they can continue to recycle that money and invest in other organisations like yours in the future. But they also care about the social return and the impact, essentially the difference that money is going to make to society as a result of lending to your organisation. Some investors will sit further to the right and some will sit further to the left of that scale, depending on how they're set up and where their money comes from. So in terms of being brilliant at getting social investment, we thought the best way to do this would be to kind of bring through some of the tips that we hear time and time again when speaking to founders and leaders that have successfully secured social investment. So there's lots here on kind of be bold and having belief in your idea, taking that leap. There's some more practical as well. So having all your financial documents in order, you know, being really confident in your business plan. That's comes up quite a lot when we speak to founders. And in the bottom right there, it says kind of be confident in your idea, but remember that impact is a lot harder to achieve without that finance. And I think that's quite a nice one as well to remember, you know, when you're going through the various processes of social investment, the kind of why you're doing it piece. And the ultimate goal, it comes back to the ultimate goal of trying to create more impact for your users. In terms of what our data is telling us, so we have some brilliant tools available on the Good Finance website, and that gives us lots of really interesting data about what the sector is looking at the moment when it comes to social investment. So you'll see that equity is actually the most searched for product on our investor directory, and that's closely followed by blended finance, which is usually a portion of portion loan, portion grant, and the kind of split can vary by investor. The most searched for impact area is communities, so that's really interesting. That was by far the most searched for for organisations working in that area looking for social investment, but that was closely followed by health and social care and arts, heritage, sports and faith. In terms of amount, so we often get, you know, what's the average amount people are looking for when it comes to social investment, and I think this really does challenge some assumptions. So the joint top search for here brackets were 100,000 to 250,000 and 10 to 50,000, which I think is really telling of the various uses and the diversity of uses that social investment can have for an organisation. And finally, when it comes to kind of locations on our mapper, we had London, Scotland and the Northwest being the most searched for locations for social investment, which is really interesting, given a lot of people think, you know, it's only London, it's just a city-based thing, and I think that really challenges that assumption. Although London is on there, we've also got kind of the Northwest and Scotland as well. I will pause here, but just to flag, it wouldn't be right for me to talk about how to be brilliant at getting social investment without signposting to some of our brilliant resources. These slides will be circulated after the session, and each is hyperlinked, but I really recommend going onto the Good Finance website, checking out all the free tools and resources available, as well as some of our programs that are available for those that want to dig a little deeper into specific topic areas. I'll pause there, but thank you very much, Tim. And yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Annie. That's fantastic. That's great. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions in a minute, but I just want to flag it that in the chat, various people are joining and just signposting various resources. Ashley Horsey from Commonweal has come on and talked about the innovative social investment model they have. Charlotte from Mission Beyond has come onto the chat, and Lauren from First Sport in Scotland is talking about the business and financial support they offer to social entrepreneurs. So lots of inspiration and signposting on the chat already, and I'm sure there'll be some questions coming too. But take a look at the chat, everyone, to get some more resources and signposts. Annie, I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. So first of all, how do you think people feel at the moment out there in the market? I mean, there's and I don't mean what does the market look like in terms of the investment, you know, the size of the market. I mean, how does social enterprises feel at the moment about, you know, whether or not they'll get social investment? Do they feel positive? Do they feel challenged? You know, do they feel as though they can get what they want? I mean, it's interesting that you know, you've got some people going for between, you know, fairly small amounts of money and quite a lot of people also going for that growth money. But what are your network telling you about whether or not they feel as though they can get social investment or not?
Yeah, great question. I think we used to say, we used to kind of lead talks off with, grant funding, free money is always better than money that you have to pay back with interest. But interestingly, we actually got pulled up on that at a recent event to an organization that basically said, grant money isn't free money. I spend hours and we spend lots of time and resource of our organization applying for grants that just aren't there. And, that kind of lack of grants, I think, is meaning that social enterprises, charities, community organizations are kind of being forced into diversifying their income. And so in that way, I think lots of people are being very open and kind of willing to try new things and learn about social investment as a way that it may unlock what they want to do for the future of their organization. So I think there's definitely that willingness to learn from the sector, which is really refreshing. There's obviously some elements, to do with kind of legal structure and other kind of historic challenges that face the sector that mean that it's not for everyone, and that it can be quite an arduous and difficult process. So I guess that's also worth mentioning as well.
You've got a lot of sort of success stories on your website, haven't you? But you've also got, I think, interestingly, some, you don't shy away from the difficulties people have as well. But generally, would you say that there's a positive story to tell out there, and there is investment available, and it's worth people sort of taking a look and going in there with a sort of positive outlook?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that. And, that it's a really collaborative sector. And, I do think social investors are listening. There seems to be more of a demand in recent times for kind of that blended finance element where you do get part grant, part loan, which obviously will make it more affordable for the organisation. And I think also, investors are there, they're willing to help. We really hope that they would kind of refer you to someone that might be able to help you if they are unable to. And we also hear lots of stories about, I kind of applied and then I got turned down, but I actually got turned down with a list of areas to work on, and really kind of robust feedback, which meant when I went back the second time, I felt a lot more confident in what I was asking for, and was ultimately successful. So it's worth keeping that in mind as well.
So engaging in the social investment journey, even if you get a kind of turned down, it can be a positive experience because it can teach you how to get investment in the future, basically. I wanted to also ask very quickly about, you mentioned equity was the most looked for sort of finance, and yet debt, in other words, borrowing money and paying it back with interest is the most the form of social investment that is most prevalent among social investors. I know people are developing more equity and equity-like products, but it might be worth just saying that there is now a bit of flexibility, isn't there? And even if you're not an organization, so many organizations in this sector don't have shares, for example, and so they can't have equity, but there are equity-like products, like sort of repayable, other types of repayable finance, revenue share on that sort of revenue participation and that sort of stuff that allows you to get more patient, flexible type of finance. So it's worth sort of saying to people, don't feel just because you haven't got shares or you don't seem to fit a box, it's still worth talking to social investors because they can help you navigate what might be possible. And indeed, as you've already said, really, social investors are interested in finding solutions for you, not just in sort of, turning you down and saying, no, you don't fit the right shape,
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely more of a demand for that patient, flexible kind of equity-like capital. And yeah, as you say, my advice would definitely be to go and speak to your investors. If they, for whatever reason, are unable to offer that type of finance, I bet that they will know who can, and I'm sure we'll be more than happy to signpost you in their direction.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks, Annie. That's great. You're going to come back a bit later. And obviously we're also going to hear from Brendan from the social investors perspective a bit later as well. I'm just going to ask Sophie to come in now. So Sophie, we are Juno, one of our SE100 winners this year in the Investment Pioneer Award, and our judges were particularly impressed with the way in which you have persuaded 2 different local authorities to back your social enterprise solution to address the challenges of providing housing and care for vulnerable children, we know that there are big challenges in the social care sector, and it's really powerful to see the positive role that a local authority can take in actually providing affordable, repayable investment to support your work. But I'm sure you had to go on quite a journey to get where you are now. So please tell us about We Are Juno and the journey you've been on.
Lovely. Oh, thank you, Tim. Yeah, and big thank you for the award as well. It's been a real game changer for us. So I'm Sophie Clarke. I'm the Managing Director at We Are Juno CIC. Very, very briefly, Juno exists to create a network of safe and loving homes for children, specifically in Liverpool City region. And we hope that, we'll develop a model of care that has much better outcomes for young people, but that also means that local authorities, are getting real kind of bang for their buck in terms of, the quality of care that they're funding. In terms of our social investment journey, I guess the kind of endpoint that I'll speak to now is that we were able to secure, and I say we because it was by no means me on my own. There's a great team around us here at Juno. We secured 2,675,000. That was a split. As Annie touched on, there was some grant in there. There was 750 grand's worth of grant and 1.9 million in social investment. So I'll talk you through the kind of steps to the dance. It was quite a clumsy dance and it took a very long time. And I'll touch on some of the learning as well. So how did we get there? I think the first step and really critical step was we had to really understand the problem. There's lots of rhetoric around us at the moment around the state of children's residential care and social care more broadly, Tim, as you touched on. However, when we so Juno's been set up by Capacity, which is a public service design agency here in Liverpool. We were approached by some of the social care leaders here, particularly kind of DCSs, Director of Children's Services and Commissioners, who had a much stronger understanding than we did of what was happening in the sector. Many children being placed out of area because there simply wasn't the kind of the right placements here for children, issues with quality of some of the placements here, and very, very little BCSE provision. Only 2% of children's homes in the region when we started were operating by not-for-profit organisations. There's lots of rhetoric in the media around, kind of profiteering in the sector, and the CMA around that time had published a report that evidenced kind of 22% profit margins being, taken by some of the bigger organisations. But fundamentally, they wanted to create a network of not-for-profit homes that would deliver better outcomes for children. So we spent a lot of time just listening and really understanding from the perspective of the social care leaders, but also staff already working in the sector, and most importantly, children who were living in residential care. What was it like? What was working? What wasn't working? And then I guess the second step with that kind of context was thinking about, well, what will better look like? And children told us a lot about, the ways that care would feel. How do you get love into the kind of wiring of residential care? And we worked with the stakeholders to really kind of shape the concept, and most importantly, to define, what would real impact look like and how are we going to measure that. From there, I think the next step was creating a really solid business plan. So we had probably a period of about 3 to 4 months where we were just in the kind of nuts and bolts of the feasibility planning. We did a really detailed financial model that painted like a 12-year view on how we thought the business would operate. That forecasted a break-even position at around year 3. We also, thought really carefully about the legal structure for this organisation. We were really keen that Juno, whilst it would receive weekly placement fees, like, all providers in the sector from local authorities, that as a CIC, there's an asset lock obviously on how our surplus can be used, and we wanted that surplus to be reinvested in early help so that over time we can play a preventative role in children and families' support. How would we actually do that? The kind of legal vehicle was really, really important. And we had to build our board. We knew if we were going to stand a chance of securing the investment that we needed a really kind of, strong governance arrangement around the organisation. So we started building the board. That helped ultimately create the case for investment, and we could see that we needed over £2 million to get going. Setting up residential homes is not cheap. You've got to buy assets, you've got to build teams. There's a lot of work that happens before you can actually operate. And with that in mind, we knew it was probably quite unlikely that it would just be one investor or kind of partner that we'd need to work with. It would need to be a group, and it would probably ideally be a blend of startup finance. So from there, the next step was kind of nurturing those partnerships. We knocked on some of the kind of more traditional bank doors and charitable funders who had investment arms, but as a startup with zero track record, working in one of the most kind of highly regulated areas of social care, we were not an easy ask. The work itself carries a lot of risk. So some of those kind of more traditional routes we could see weren't going to work for us. So we started to kind of share this experience really with local authorities here who were desperate to get this going, and Wirral Metropolitan Borough Council came on board first. They offered Juno £1 million. That's debt finance at it was a 7.5% interest rate, so not particularly cheap. It's a pretty standard commercial deal. But what they could offer was a really long-term repayment period. So it was going to be a 12-year arrangement. They could give us a 3-year holiday on repayment. So during that time where we knew cash was going to be tight, we'd have more flexibility. And I think Wirral coming on board obviously gave a lot of confidence to others as our main customer. Crudely, knowing that the host authority had kind of skin in the game really helped change the dynamic with some of the other partners that we were talking to. It's worth saying as well, obviously, during that period where we were knocking on lots of doors, we did really rely on grants. So we were supported by KPMG Foundation, National Lottery Community Fund and Siegelman Trust with some of that kind of development phase. And that was absolutely critical really to us getting to the point where we are today. Once Wirral came on board, we did then kind of quite quickly were able to secure 2 other arrangements, one with the Postcode Innovation Trust, and that was for 250 grand and half grant, half investment, at much lower interest rate. It was only 3%. And Liverpool City Region Combined Authority provided another 800 grand on top of that. That was at 5%, and it was again quite a long deal, so a 10-year arrangement with a 3-year holiday. Interestingly and helpfully, they all agreed to unsecured arrangements. We at that point we didn't have any assets. And I think everyone agreeing that they were comfortable with that and working collaboratively around that arrangement with us was very helpful. In terms of how bringing that group together, I'll be honest, if I did it again I would do it differently. We built the relationships and held them quite separately at the start. We had one of the experiences we'd had with a group of investors previously meant we didn't get that deal, and I was wary about having all of our eggs in one basket. So we nurtured each of the kind of arrangements separately, and it was once we secured the cash that we brought everybody together. But yeah, I was just really wary of all the eggs in one basket again. That took 2 years, so it was not easy, and I think the sequence was really important. So yeah, I think once we had the LA arrangement in place, everything else followed. I think, the last two steps, obviously actually doing the deal, takes time. We had an in-principle agreement from Wirral, and it was another kind of year until we actually had the cash in the bank. Obviously, particularly when working with the likes of local authority, there's a lot of kind of committees and political processes that they need to move through in addition to the kind of standard due diligence process, and that took a lot of time. We had to do, even more detailed analysis of the kind of forecast and the plans. So, and during that period, you've got to manage those relationships really, really carefully. And, key to that for us was just being really warm, really open, honest, about where we were, and realistic with the kind of timelines. And then I guess the final step was actually doing it. Our experience was, it's very hard. Any startup is going to face challenges. And, particularly with launching a business in a regulated environment, it was really important that we failed quickly. We were very, very open with our investors about the challenges that some of the difficulties we had. And they were really helpful and, helped building kind of some contingency, and ultimately was, providing cash that were going to help us think about some of those risks that we might face in the future, so that we had that flexibility. What have we learned? In summary, I think the sequencing matters. So having that blend of grant and social investment was critical. I think having the voices of care experience young people at the heart of the business plan gave our team and the investors confidence and conviction in what we were trying to do and why it mattered. Strong relationships are absolutely key. We had to be really open and honest with each other about what we were worried about and what was going to be hard and how we were going to manage those moments. And I think the biggest learning point was, because things took longer than we expected, we realised within a year of securing the investment that it probably wasn't enough. So, if I did it again, I'd ask for more. There's a kind of tension between being really, you've got to be ambitious and, idealistic about what you're going to achieve, but reality will mean things will probably move slower. So, yeah, I'll pause there.
That's great. Thank you, Sophie, for sharing that journey. Gosh, I mean, there's so much to unpack from that. It's in many ways a very positive journey, but it's a bit like listening to sort of an account of an Ironman challenge or something. You sort of, it obviously took a very, very long time. There must have been times during that when, I mean, you've already said that, certain investors closed the door to you, but were there times when you kind of thought, look, this isn't just going to work and we need to pack it in?
Yeah, and and there were times when I felt extremely frustrated. I think given this, the state of what was happening for children, and there wasn't a single door that we knocked on that didn't understand that problem, care about it, and agree that something radically needs to change. But the kind of the issue of our track record was a huge issue. So I think there is a tension there, particularly for startups entering, this space. The risk appetite of a lot of the investors that we spoke to was high. I think that it was hard, and again, I think that's where if you've got a strong and real connection with the people for whom you are trying to do this, that is a really, it was the thing that kept me going. So, and there are investors out there who are up for it and can understand, but it might just take a lot longer than you think to find them.
And what was the turning point then? Was the turning point just that first local authority saying, we'll take the risk?
Yeah, it absolutely was.
And did they do that out of desperation because their problem was so bad, or did they do that? I mean, that may be unfair for me to say so, but local authorities aren't known to be risk takers, and they're known to be quite bureaucratic, or at least we imagine they are. Maybe that's unfair, but But it's funny that it was a local authority that took that risk rather than a conventional social investor.
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of elements. I think there's some really bold leaders in council who really care about the communities that they serve, and we're up to something kind of radically different. Also, though, it was it's quite a safe deal. There's a decent return. We put some things into the contract that would kind of protect the price that they pay for periods of time. And there were many young people in that local authority being placed out of area because they simply didn't have the provision. So, plus, we designed it together. So I think we came at it as a collaborative problem that we wanted to try and fix. So again, I think if you've got that solid relationship before, they felt it was their responsibility to help make it happen.
The relationship side of things comes through very, very strongly from what you said in everything. Yeah. And one more quick question, which is more of a practical question. You mentioned that you did a very, very detailed financial model, for example. Did you have a kind of Excel accountancy whiz kid who was sort of helping you do this, or where do you get help from for stuff like that, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I work with a wonderful FD, Sarah Morris, who she is the Excel whiz kid. So she, a really detailed model that every investor we took it to was like, oh my God, this is glorious. But we do, I think, having, again, it's where your governance kicks in, and having a strong non-exec who's got similar capabilities and kind of test and check some of that. And also listening to the feedback, some of the feedback we got when we did get bounced back at the beginning. There's an independent analyst leading the due diligence process there. So we, listen to the feedback that you get, and where did things need to be clearer, where had optimism bias crept in, and challenging some of those financial assumptions was really important.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Sophie, for sharing that. I'm going to move on now to, there's so much more we could ask you, but I'm going to move on to Brendan now, because we've having heard the social enterprise side of one investment journey, we'd like to explore some things from the perspective of the social investor. So Brendan, your organisation, NatWest Social and Community Capital, you've been handing out social investments since 1999, and you're in fact celebrating, therefore, your 25th anniversary this year. So congratulations. As social investment goes, actually, the organisation was one of the very earliest organisations to be doing social investment in the UK. And I hasten to add that despite the size of your very impressive beard, you personally haven't been doing this for 25 years, but there is a huge amount of learning that NatWest S&CC as an institution has in this area. So we're really looking forward to hearing your perspective of what works, what you're looking for, and some of the most important lessons that you've learned. So over to you, Brendan. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, so just to kind of give a bit of a kind of a background about kind of NatWest Social Community Capital, I think David's going to bring my slides up at some stage, so I'll continue and they'll come on shortly. But we're an independent charity from NatWest. As Tim said, we were founded in 1999, so celebrating 25th year this year. We support purpose-led organisations who have social impact within the communities, but are not eligible for mainstream lending, so may be declined by your bank or mainstream lenders. But you don't have to bank with NatWest to get a loan from us as well. We look at the kind of the impact first and the purpose-led kind of organisation. So, put a picture of the team. We are a small team, but we are across the UK. We focus on kind of Midlands, north of England, and Scotland. David, you go on to the next slide, please. So just looking at kind of what we do. So we provide kind of finance for purpose-led organisations, and we prioritise the social impact, and we find flexible kind of support by way of the kind of the loan, which I can go into more detail later. But we also provide mentoring and networking opportunities for investees through the kind of the big network of NatWest. So there's a lot of different kind of opportunities that we can link you up with people who have different special skill sets to give additional support. We assess impact and performance from ourselves, from our investees' point of view. So we do look for the impact that you deliver. We're not outcome based, so we look at your impact first, and then we assess it within that kind of your ability to measure your impact and demonstrate it. We reinvest all of our funds within the charity, so anything that's repaid in gets reinvested back out. We lend that to other charities or social enterprises. Dave, if you go on to the next slide, please. So this is kind of more around our criteria as to what we look for. So we look for established third sector organisations in the UK, and we look at the positive social impact that you have. So we would look for you to already have that impact within the communities, and we would look to support to enhance that impact. We do look for you to be financially stable and have income streams other than grants. So it could be that you're making that shift from grant funding into commercial incomes, but we would expect there to be either other income streams in place that can repay debt, or you're looking to kind of grow into new income streams to service debt. But we wouldn't recommend anybody to take a loan on who is solely reliant on grant funding or donations. And what we also look for you to do is to evidence that you are investment ready, and that goes from everything from the management, governance, and financial position. So the legal structure, the management team that you have, the boards. Sophie talked about how important it was for them to get their boards in place before they went out to kind of find investment for them. So it is really important that you have everything in place prior to kind of looking for investments. And we would actually say that you need to have 4 non-related directors or trustees on your board. And the reason for that is that they will bring different skill sets, so they'll bring different elements, and one might be financial, one might be legal, but it means that you have the right people around you to support you to make those decisions that you need. And also means that you don't have to become an expert in every single field. You have somebody with that skill set that can support and make decisions or support the decision making. I say we do support people who are not eligible for mainstream lending. So it may be that your bank has declined you, or that you're not don't meet their kind of more debt servicing calculation that they look for. So we look at that kind of as a positive, that we can look mainly at the impact, but also at the kind of future trading in a way. David, if you go on to the next one, please. So this is kind of just reflecting back on kind of key areas and lessons that we've kind of learned or noticed over our kind of portfolio, and Tim said that the 25 years. Governance is key. So it's the right people around you to support. And it, as I kind of mentioned before, it just means that you don't have to be a master of everything, that you have people in place that can support you and to drive things forward. So if you are making a shift from say grant funding into commercial, it's having somebody who knows that kind of business commercial side of things, so they can support when you're looking at contracts or anything like that. And also having somebody with legal can look at your governance and make sure that everything's robust within the governance of the charity or social enterprise. You will have heard Sophie mention about kind of talking to your lenders and how important it is to be honest. It is really important to be honest with your lender, your funder in a sense. So we don't tell us what you think we want to hear. If you're honest with us, then we can look at kind of finding a way to support, and we can have those open and honest conversations. Also having early conversations and being more proactive than reactive is great, because it shows that you've seen maybe a challenging time coming up and you're looking to prepare for it, so we can talk through the best option and we can iron things out to find how we can support ongoing as well. The next one is key, planning and budgeting. So if you plan for worst case scenarios, it allows you to have those kind of early stage conversations, and you know where your pinch points are coming and you know where you need that support. Sophia talked about kind of having that kind of robust financial forecasting and financial planning in place. So it's key to plan. Doesn't mean that the worst case scenario is going to happen. It just means you've thought about it and you're showing the funder that you've given that some thought. You understand kind of where things could get kind of bad for you in a sense, and you're looking at kind of ways to plan to avoid that. So it's all about kind of planning and showcasing what your kind of thought and where you see things going forward. Knowing what you want as well, and you touched on kind of understanding how much you need and for what purpose that you need it as well. So you know exactly kind of, this is what we need, there's the reason why we need it, and things may change, it may increase and may decrease, but knowing exactly what you kind of need and what the purpose for that funding is. You don't be taking on debt just because you want some kind of rainy day funds. You want it to serve a purpose because you're repaying it, and there is kind of costs involved in that. Impact reporting, telling your story. The previous webinar was around this, and really useful, really helpful. But the way you kind of report on your impact and talk about it is key for any social lender. And I think knowing your value is quite important as well. So understanding that it may take longer than what you've actually decided or kind of initially planned for, and not getting lost in that as well. If you just go on to the next slide, please, David. So there's it's taken from our impact report. And I just want to bring this up because it shows the kind of relationship side of it. So the loans approved, we've approved 2.2 million. But from that, 1.1 million of that was actually approved to the current customers that we have. So Sophie kind of said that she kind of needed more money, and that happened. So we've lent this to our current customers, and it's that relationship that we've built up that they know that they can come back to us and they can kind of talk things through, and we can assess it to see if it's the right kind of lend, the right thing to do. And also on that slide, you'll see 95% of our investors would recommend us. So it is very much a relationship-driven lens that we have with any of our customers. And if you go on to the next slide, please, David. So this is just what we offer, the products that we offer. And you talked about the different side of things. So we do debt, it is repayable, but there's 4 different ones. So Tim talked about the different stages that an organization would have. So we have one from property purchases to flexible growth funding, working capital support, and bridging loans, so bridging VAT or bridging grant funding. The terms are there that you can scan the QR code to make contact with us. But one thing that we do look at is we assess the impact and the risk when we're assessing for, any kind of any loan opportunity that comes our way. So we look at everything from the impact to the governance to the senior management team. We do look at the financial side of things as well. So we look at the past performance, but we also look at the future performance as well. And we can assess things based on the forecasting. So having those robust plans in place are good, but having context behind the numbers as well is very important. So you can kind of showcase where you've come to with the forecasting, why you've come to those figures, and give us kind of more confidence that you understand your figures as well. So I'll pause there if that's okay, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. That's great. That's great. This is maybe an unfair question, so I apologise in advance for asking it. But am I right in thinking you probably couldn't have invested in We Are Juno initially, but that you maybe could invest in them now? Not that you're talking to them, but I'm just sort of thinking, are there are certain types of organisation at certain stages that certain investors can and can't invest in. It's just it's wise to try and be aware of that.
Yeah, there are kind of, and you kind of talked about the different social lenders that are out there, and we can always signpost to various different ones if we can do it. So there are kind of social lenders that offer, I suppose, that kind of early stage or development funding. We don't, we're not kind of aimed at that early stage. It's more that kind of growth side of it, or property purchase. So I think as Sophie's story kind of shows, it is very hard for them to navigate it, and they've done amazingly well to get where they are. So I think her story is really powerful, but it is a very tricky kind of area, that kind of startup side of things. But there are
Yeah.
options, and Sophie told a very, very good broad story about how they navigated it.
Yeah. And there's no harm in having a conversation, is there? I mean, the point, you're there, even if you can't lend someone some money, actually the relationship you can develop with an organization and the support you can give, as with any social investor, is important, isn't it? Those conversations are important to have because you can signpost or provide advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we would talk to hundreds of organizations over a 12-month period, and we wouldn't lend to all of them. We'd have conversations with them. We'd signpost them to different options. There is different kind of stages of an organization that different finances packages are best for. So grant funding or social repayment or equity. So there is loads of different options, but we have loads of conversations, and we signpost people to different lenders. Good Finance is an amazing organization that provide loads of support and signposting as well. But yeah, that isn't for everybody in a sense.
And I do get a sense, even though like any market, there's a certain level of competition in the social investment market. There's also a lot of collaboration, and you do work with other social investors, either to put together consortia to do deals and make them possible, bit like the one that Sophie's done with the 2 local authorities and the foundation. But you also will suggest other organisations that people could go to, won't you? So
yeah, exactly. I mean, like so when you look at kind of like maybe commercial banking in a sense, that's competitive, that's kind of like it's ruthless and whatever else.
Yeah,
this we all want the same thing. We want the organization to survive. We want to make sure that we can kind of support them in the best way and to make them kind of grow and be as impactful as possible. So we do all know each other, and everybody, we know a lot of each other, and we do tend to kind of look at co-lending opportunities, and we look at supporting each other. And I say there's different, we all offer different kind of products at different stages as well. So if we know that we can't do it, we might just signpost them to a different social lender we know is kind of more tailored to them.
Yeah. So reality check, you can't help everyone. The answer will be no in some cases or in several cases, but it's not going to be a blank no. And actually you have a mission to support people, and that goes wider than just whether or not you can give them the money, and you may be able to give them the money at a different stage. Yeah,
exactly. We have organizations that we've been speaking to for years, and we kind of look at what stage it is. So we'll always look at giving the right loan at the right time to an organization.
Okay.
But we do signpost, and we do work in collaboration with other lenders.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Brendan. That's really useful. Annie, I'm going to bring you back in now again, because having heard from Brendan and from Sophie, we just wanted you to reflect a little on what you think some of those key lessons are that we can learn from both of them, from both sides, and what you think are the most important messages you'd like to share with people now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think thank you to both Sophie and Brendan. Really, really interesting. Really enjoyed those sessions. So I think in terms of We Are Juno's case, I suppose I think thank you to Sophie for being very honest and transparent about some of those challenges that they faced, particularly. I think it's a really interesting example because it's such a diverse financial toolkit. So there's different sources of capital coming from so many different organizations, and that's fantastic. But that does bring a whole new level of kind of needing those people to speak to each other and to understand the different levels. And okay, so they're investing this, what does that mean for us, and how are we going to all work together? So it's really, really fantastic example of kind of making use of various different types of capital, which is what we absolutely encourage at Good Finance. But it's really interesting to hear more about some of those challenges that comes with that, and particularly I suppose in terms of the length of time that it then takes to be where you need to be. I think that was really interesting as well, and also really insightful to hear Sophie say that, you know, you actually kind of wish you'd had more capital, and so kind of what to do in that situation when, you know, actually we're in a position now where we probably will go out and look for more, and look to secure more, but kind of looking back, what you wish you'd done differently or asked for perhaps a little bit more, which we see quite a lot as well. You know, kind of social entrepreneurs kind of wish they'd been a bit more honest and upfront, and I guess demanding in a weird way when they're kind of having those discussions with investors.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in the world of venture capital or something, people ask for millions and millions, but and you do get that message, don't you? I think from quite a lot when you're working in social investment, people are slightly embarrassed about the fact that they might need some money, please, and how much could we possibly have? And, you know, you and actually there does need to be a bit more perhaps boldness, and maybe, you know, use that word again, honest conversation, because the investors can actually help you consider whether you need more money. And the investors asking for more money is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, it may be a much more realistic thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings nicely into kind of some of the bits that Brendan was talking about as well, is, you know, the really driving home the importance of having that open and honest relationship with your investor. You know, we often get asked, well, what happens if it goes wrong? And, you know, life happens, things do go wrong in the world. And it's really important to have had that relationship with your investor, that you feel that they can be almost your first port of call. And we've you know, had countless discussions where people wish they didn't kind of put their head in the sand and feel the burden themselves for so long, when actually they just needed to pick up the phone, have a chat with their investor, who, because they are a social investor and are kind of in this partnership with you, will, I'm sure, work very, very hard to kind of come up with a solution, and a workable kind of flexible solution for you and your organization as well.
We've got a yes with 2 exclamation marks in the webinar chat from Jen Sutton here, saying we've given grants over what people have asked for because we saw the importance of their projects and we were in a place where we could offer more. So, and that's the same, I think, for lots of social investors as well. So, important point to make, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I was actually at an event the other day where social investors were talking about sometimes social entrepreneurs kind of not paying themselves right, or kind of offering to take pay cuts and things like that, which, when you think about everything else that they've got going on in the world, is just it's not what they want to be kind of working towards as well, just in terms of the stress and mental health of those social entrepreneurs.
Great. Thank you, Annie. We've got another question in the chat, just saying an organization looking for some form of agent to guide us through the process to win investment. So this is a little bit like the question around the financial model. You know, who are there people out there who can offer guidance and advice to help people through the investment process? Not everyone has an amazing, talented full-time MD or accountant or whatever, but and also consultancy can be quite expensive, can't it? So where can people go, obviously apart from the Good Finance website, where can you go to get people to help you through this process?
Is that a question for me? Sorry.
Well, I reckon that's a question to everyone actually, but I'll start with you.
Okay, obviously the Good Finance resources are a good place to start. As part of that, we do have an advisor directory, and that lists kind of advisors that have experience in the social investment sector. So we'll be able to kind of best advise across various things, from kind of business planning and development, all the way through to kind of HR and people policies. So that's definitely a place to go. I think Access the Foundation for Social Investment, they do have a range of kind of programs live. I'm not sure what is live at the moment, but always worth checking out their website for some signposting as well, to some of that pre-investment support.
And quite a few organizations have accelerator programs and incubator programs and that sort of stuff, which are often free or very little money, aren't they, I guess? Yeah. Okay. Sophie and Brendan, just a quick over to you about, you know, where else people can go to get help and advice. Sophie, did you have anyone else who you were able to turn to for help and advice around this?
Yeah, hearing you talk there, Annie, I was remembering we did get an access grant, and that was really helpful. You know, in terms of the specialist areas of the organisation that you need to unpick more. So I definitely encourage people to look at that. We also found, you know, some of the investors that we were talking to, you know, they offer that support. For example, Sumerian, we were discussing with them, and you know, they've got internal resource to help organisations think about impact and, you know, and other kind of factors that are going to be important to getting the deal over the line. So I guess don't be afraid to ask potential investors, can you help us with this particular piece? And, you know, a good due diligence process should help tease some of that out and help you spot where you do need that extra help.
And again, there's a message there, isn't there? Don't be frightened. Things like due diligence sound very sort of frightening, actually, to people who haven't been in this before. But it's not just about checking whether you've been truthful or not. It's about sort of checking that you've got the right engineering and stuff in place so that you will be successful. It's got a positive, you know, reasoning behind it.
And you know, just picking up on your point, Tim, that, you know, the discussion with Brendan about, even if it's a no when you get to the end of that process, you know, we've just secured, it's still in the agreement stage, so I can't name the investor yet.
Okay.
But we've just secured another deal, and that is with
Congratulations.
one of the investors who said no. You know, who they saw it kind of warts and all. So I totally echo that point that you know, what's the expression? The flowers of tomorrow are in the seeds of today. You know,
very nice.
People remember, and you can still go back and have those discussions, and it you know, be a positive outcome.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. We come to the end of our time now, but I'm just going to, before we go, I'm going to ask each of you just to share one piece of advice about how to be brilliant at getting social investment for your social enterprise. So, Annie, I think I'll start with you.
Brilliant, thanks, Tim. Yeah, my advice would be to just get out there and speak to people who have been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. We've got a range of case studies on our website, but also attending fantastic events like this where you can hear from Sophie and other leaders that have actually secured social investment really openly and transparently about the process. Get your questions answered from people that have experience, and take it from there.
Great. Brendan, last word from you.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I think mine's just around being open and honest relationship with your social lender. Don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Just be open and honest and have those conversations early.
Super. And Sophie, final word to the social enterprise in the room.
Very straightforward. Ask for more than you think you need.
Right. Very good.
Optimism bias is going to creep in.
You don't ask, you don't get. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well, look, thank you so much to all of our speakers, Brendan, Annie, and Sophie, and to our partners at NatWest Social and Community Capital. Our next social business coffee breaks and Wise 100 lunchtime takeaway discussions will be announced soon. So look out for the topics and dates in our newsletter and on our social media. And we'll be publishing the video and the story from this webinar on the Pioneers Post website and through our social media channels soon. So many thanks to all of you who joined us and who gave signposts and information in the chat. Have a lovely day and a lovely rest of your week. Thank you very much and goodbye.